Welcome to the nervous system. Okay, there are two different types of systems. There's the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is responsible for sensory information and responding according to this information. It consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Now, the brain, it's the most complex organ in the body. Pretty cool. It is essentially the control unit and coordinates activity. Now, these activities range from physical motion to the secretion of hormones, the creation of memories, and the sensation of emotion, feelings. In order for all these functions to occur, the brain is split up into 4 different parts. Now there's the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and the frontal lobe. The temporal lobe is responsible for processing sensory input and assigning it emotional meaning. It is in charge of taking sensory information that deals with the 5 senses, and to translate it to be understood by the body. Now, it is key in understanding and comprehending speech and also processing memories. Integrating them with taste, sound, sight, and touch. Next, the occipital lobe. It deals with sight. It is in charge of being able to understand what the eyes are seeing. Similar to how the temporal lobe makes sense of information that has to do with sound, the occipital lobe makes sense of visual information.
So if the mass changes, then the velocity must also.
So that we can understand it. The parietal lobe is in charge of being able to process sensory information within seconds. Taste.
Yes.
Temperature. Touch. Spatial awareness.
So versatile was getting stuck in the middle, saying, and it was basically, let the ass go.
I'm claustrophobic.
And navigation.
All of them. He let me look, and that's ridiculous.
Are processed. The frontal lobe is involved in attention.
Subclass. What's 2 plus 2 equal?
Reward, short-term memory, motivation, and planning. This part of the brain makes decisions and is used for thinking or study for a test. Now, the frontal lobe is also where your personality is formed and is also necessary in being able to speak fluently and meaningfully.
Ăn gì đấy? Tao ăn phở đặc biệt. Phở đặc biệt à?
Last but not least, look at that spinal cord we got going on back there, you know? Okay, this is another part of the central nervous system. It carries information between the brain and the body, but does a variety of other tasks as well. It connects with the nerves of the peripheral system. Motor commands from the brain travel from the spine to the muscles, and sensory information travels from the sensory tissues towards the spinal cord, and ultimately to the brain. The spinal cord also has circuits that control reflexive responses, such as the involuntary movement your arm makes if your finger touches a flame. The circuits within the spine also can produce more complex movements, such as walking.
The peripheral nervous system includes all of the other nerves in the body that are not part of the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system's main role is to connect the nervous system to the organs, limbs, and skin. These nerves extend from the central nervous system to the outermost areas of the body. The peripheral nervous system allows the brain and spinal cord to receive and send information to other areas of the body, which allows us to react to stimuli in our environment. The peripheral nervous system is split into 2 parts, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic system is the part of the peripheral nervous system that is responsible for carrying sensory information to and from the central nervous system and for voluntary movement. This system has two major types of neurons, which are basically nerve cells that receive and send electrical signals within the body. These two major types of neurons in the somatic system are sensory neurons and motor neurons. Sensory neurons carry information from the nerves to the central nervous system. These neurons allow us to take in sensory information from the brain and spinal cord to muscle fibers throughout the body. These neurons allow us to take physical action in response to stimuli in the environment. The autonomic nervous system is the part of the peripheral nervous system that is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions such as blood flow, heartbeat, digestions, and breathing. This part controls parts of the body that are not where a motor neuron is able to transmit a signal to the muscle fiber, causing muscle contraction, also known as movement, usually voluntarily controlled. The nerves involved in peripheral nervous system include the cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and their roots and branches, and neuromuscular junctions. Cranial nerves relay information between the brain and parts of the body. Spinal nerves carry motor, sensory, and involuntary signals between the spinal cord and body.
There are two parts of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system deals with preparing the body to react to stress or emergencies, known as the fight or flight response.
So you been talking that smack, bro? You been talking that smack, bro? Come on, son.
It contains adrenergic fibers and tends to depress secretion, decrease the tone and contractility of smooth muscle, and increase heart rate. The parasympathetic nervous system slows the heart rate, increases intestinal and gland activity, and relaxes sphincter muscles. It is responsible for stimulation of rest or digest or feed and breathe. These two systems make up the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for the body's unconscious actions and regulates bodily functions such as heart rate. Endothelial cells, part of the circulatory system, maintain the blood-brain barrier. Baroreceptors send information to the brain about blood pressure. Cerebrospinal fluid drains the venous blood supply. The blood regulates heart rate and blood pressure. Digestion. Digestive processes provide the building blocks for some neurotransmitters. The autonomic nervous system controls the tone of digestive tract. The brain controls drinking and feeding behavior and also the muscles for eating and elimination. The digestive system sends sensory information to the brain. Urination. The bladder, which is part of the urinary system, sends sensory information to the brain, and the brain controls urination. Sexual arousal.
Babe.
The reproductive system and reproductive hormones affect brain development and sexual behavior. The brain controls mating behavior. There are 5 sensory organs: the eyes, ears, tongue, skin, and nose. The eye is the organ of the sense of sight. Eyes detect light and convert it to electrochemical impulses in neurons. The parts of the eye are cornea, aqueous, humor, pupil and iris, lens, vitreous, retina, and eyelids and eyelashes. The ear is the organ concerned with hearing. The ear has 3 parts: the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear.
Country boy, I love you.
The tongue is a muscular organ in the mouth that is vital in tasting and chewing food and in speech. The tongue is covered with moist pink tissue called mucosa and tiny bumps called papillae, which is covered with thousands of taste buds. Taste buds are collections of nerve-like cells that connect to nerves going into the brain. The 4 types of taste buds are sour, sweet, bitter, and salty.
So you ready for a game tomorrow?
The skin is the largest organ of the body. It protects us from microbes and the elements, helps us regulate body temperature, and permits the sensation of touch, heat, and cold. The epidermis, the outermost layer of the skin, provides a waterproof barrier and creates our skin tone. The nose lets air in and out of the body and helps us distinguish different smells in that air. Olfactory cells line the top of your nasal cavity. On the other end of the cell are olfactory nerve fibers which pass through the ethmoid bone and into the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is directly attached to the cerebral cortex of your brain.
That's hot. You know, with these handy-dandy oven mitts, you won't have to burn your hand anytime soon.
A stimulus is picked up by the sensory nerve cells in the skin and is fed along a series of sensory neurons through the network of nerves that is known as the peripheral nervous system. The stimulus then enters the spinal cord, where it is interpreted by the brain. Neurons communicate with each other at synapses, which is a site where a neuron transmits a nerve impulse to another neuron. In the spinal cord, the synapsis between sensory, motor, and interneuron occurs in the gray matter. This part of the nervous system is known as the central nervous system. A response is sent from the brain, the process is reversed, and the response is fed along another set of motor neurons to the set of muscles or organs. Upon receiving the response, the muscles or organs execute the desired response. This all happens quickly to prevent harm.
And we're back. On today's segment, we're going to compare the nervous systems of humans to nervous systems of other organisms. And the first we're going to talk about is a boa, a python, and a viper. So, we're going to talk about their infrared vision. The pit organ that looks like nose holes has a special membrane that can sense body heat from up to 1 meter away. It's similar to how you feel heat with your nerves. If you're sitting next to a radiator, you feel that heat and your brain tells you to move away before you get burned. Sometimes if it's really cold outside, a hug from a friend makes you warmer. Next, we have Jacobson's organ. Okay, snakes smelled using a forked tongue that collects scent molecules and then brings them into their mouths, and then the Jacobson's organ reads the scents. This allows snakes to have a better sense of smell than bloodhounds. And bloodhounds' sense of a smell is around 300 times better than humans. This is also similar to how your nervous system sends signals to the brain about things. You smell, let's say, popcorn. That scent makes you hungry. Last but not least, let's talk about the fish lateral line system. Now, this system allows detection of movement, vibration, and pressure gradients. It provides spatial awareness and allows fish to navigate its environment.
Diseases. Aphasia is the loss of speech. If someone suffers a stroke or a traumatic brain injury involving the left side of the brain where the motor speech area is located, they may suffer speech impediments that vary over a spectrum of problems from difficulty to complete loss of speech. Epilepsy. It is a central nervous system disorder in which brain activity becomes abnormal, causing seizures or periods of unusual behavior, sensations, and loss of awareness. It is the fourth most common neurological disorder and affects people of all ages. Causes may be related to a brain injury or a family tendency, but often the cause is completely unknown. It causes unpredictable seizures and can cause other health problems as well. The electrical events that produce the symptoms occur in the brain. The location of that event, how it spreads, how much of the brain is affected, and how long it lasts all have profound effects. These factors determine the character of a seizure and its impact on the individual. Alzheimer's, a neurodegenerative disease caused by brain cell death. Its cause is unknown, and its risk factors are increased by age and family history. As tissue connections decrease because of dead cells, memory and functions decrease. Sometimes vision problems occur.
You thought that was fast? Well, imagine, messages travel at a speed of 180 miles per hour. This is the left side. Did you know that it's actually the left side of the brain that controls the right side, and the right side of the brain that controls the left side? Did you know there are more nerve cells in your brain than there are stars in the Milky Way?
Nervous system. The stimulus then enters the oh my gosh!
And first, we're gonna talk about a python. Oh, it's not a python.
Did you know that there are more brain cells in your... I said it